I'll reference one book, and she's a non-political doctor. Her name is Dr. Miriam Grossman. It's a book called Lost in Transnation. She has treated, not just theorized. She's a clinician and a physician, not just someone who writes abstract medical journals. And she is one of the most outspoken people against what is called gender-affirming care, and she's treating hundreds of kids that are now damaged by this.
So I know detransitioners exist, but what do you say to the thousands of trans people that actually report happiness and being healthy after they receive gender-affirming care?
Don't doubt that in the short term, testosterone therapy from someone who has a fair amount of testosterone, it can make you feel confident. It can make you feel better in your skin. That is not a lasting effect, though.
But it is for some people.
Well, the suicide rate. I can't say that word. The self-harm rate after 8 to 10 years actually goes up. It nearly doubles, and we're still studying it. That's the other point. Is that I'm not going to throw around a lot of studies here. And they very well might be right. It might have helped them individually, but let me give you an example. If a medication is on the market and it harms 1 in 250,000 people, for example, Robitussin. You guys ever take Robitussin?
No.
No, it's a cough thing. It's they found that one of their lots of Robitussin last week might have been contaminated, and they did a massive recall, right? And it was just a whisper of it. Okay. The point that is in medicine, the first rule used to be first do no harm. And the fact
still is, right?
No, they've changed it.
The Hippocratic Oath?
They've changed it, yeah. They have.
Who's they?
The American Medical Association and a lot of the medical institutions. It's similar, but it's not the same.
They've been changed by woke ideology?
Well, you'd be surprised, actually. The medical industry's been taken over by a lot of radical forces.
All doctors are woke now?
Well, for example, when they were giving monoclonal antibodies in the city of New York, they were prioritizing people based on the color of their skin. Black individuals in New York got monoclonal antibodies above their white counterparts.
Was it based on the color of their skin, or maybe their background related to their socioeconomic status?
It was racial, but I don't want to get too deep into that rabbit hole. But the point that I'm just trying to make is that in medicine in particular, you must have a cautious approach, even if there were pluses and positives, which might very well be true. If there's even a 1%, a 2% adverse event, you pull the drug immediately, because you first do no harm. If there's something that is actively damaging a society, and it's now a certifiable fact that we see thousands of young kids are being told that they can transition, when in reality they have other underlying issues that we should address. Depression, trauma, anxiety, or they're on the autism spectrum disorder, and they get mislabeled on whether a TikTok video or some sort of other thing makes them feel as if they might have, a transgender issue, when they very well might have other issues that need to be addressed. 1 in 27 men young boys are autistic. Anyway, sorry, I don't mean to
totally fine. I just had a quick question for you two, since you guys had pretty strong positions on this. Can men get pregnant?
Grid 1 Motorsports donated $200. If we want to talk numbers, then honesty requires we first admit that gender dysphoria is a mental condition which should be treated first before any physical treatments are given. Accuracy matters.
All right, Grid 1 Motorsports.
They no longer call it gender dysphoria, unfortunately. I would actually make your argument for you. They don't even call it a medical condition. They call it, I actually don't even know what it's actually called. Gender dysphoria used to be the clinical term, but
they've changed it since.
Yeah, that's right. But I can go deeper into that. The old way we used to treat this is called watchful waiting, where we believed that puberty was the solution, not the problem. And almost every single case, and Europe was actually the pioneer of this, is that when you allow puberty to play its course, these individuals, they might end up being lesbian or gay, but not transgender. And that's a completely different thing that doesn't require hormones or eventually antidepressants on top of it. I'm sorry, Pixie, you were going to say something. So.
Yeah, my question was, can men get pregnant?
Two things. I would say if you're a biological male, if we're going to define male through biology or whatever, then no. I do want to push back on some things that I heard earlier.
Well, before you do that, go ahead. Aaron, do you have a answer to that?
I would say yes, because anybody who has a uterus has the capacity to give birth. So, for example, a trans guy who gets pregnant, yes, would be a man who is pregnant. But if you're talking about a man who is assigned a man at birth and does not have a uterus, then no, he doesn't have the ability to get pregnant. You look at me like I'm crazy or what? Do you disagree?
But a lot of women.
So do you want to know why young men are going away from the left? That's why young men are leaving the left.
Why?
Because what you just said is...
Because they're uncomfortable acknowledging reality? Some trans men can get pregnant?
What you just said is at war with reality and, massacring...
a lot of women can't get pregnant either.
Vocabulary.
So that
yeah, exactly.
It's just a question, I'll let you come in just a sec, Pixie. Which one of you referenced chromosomes? Is that well? You said like, oh, you didn't check our chromosomes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, people understood what a woman was before chromosomes were discovered. So the definition does not require this type of abstraction.
People understood what a woman was on the basis of the societal norms at the time, generally speaking, right?
Well, it's more
Which was
precisely,
my
it's about
answer,
like
yeah.
the gonads. If you were at any point in your life going to produce large gametes, then you're a woman.
How society, at least most societies as well, outside of like Western as well, but even Western, we can make this argument.
Okay.
What they would look at is the way that a person is like necessarily performing. So what is their role? That's why you have like the idea of like non-binary, third gender, et cetera, because there have been people also who have not performed their role as like a male or female. So they're put
Sure.
into the third category, third sex, whatever.
Okay.
So I would argue that for the vast majority of human histories and societies, what they look at is what is your performance. And that maps on to what we do now, because we don't really look at biology, we look at people act. That's why, let me finish.
Go ahead.
That's why we also, the terms less manly, he's less of a man than him, or she's not that womanly, makes sense. If gender was truly a binary, those words would make no sense. It would be like cat and not cat. That doesn't, you can't have a in between really. And the same thing applies for gender. There is a spectrum there. That's why the words less womanly, more manly, less manly make sense to us.
And all of those things are fluid throughout time. Like what constituted like masculine tendencies or behaviors will be different now than it was several years ago. Or even like things like colors. Like for example, pink used to be considered a masculine color. Pink is no longer really considered a masculine color. It's considered a feminine color. So there was never anything inherently masculine about the color blue or the color pink or anything like that. That could always change at any given point in time.
Do you think that male brains and female brains, or men and women brains, are different, wired differently?
There are differences between male and female brains, but I believe it's a matter of like statistical averages of like gray matter. There's not going to be like distinct anatomical features that differentiate a female brain from a male brain.
Really? You really think that?
Well, no, it's proven, like scientifically.
Well,
like
no,
when we
it's
take,
not.
yes, it
No.
is. When we take a brain scan of a male and female, the average doctor can't look and be like, that is a male brain right there.
Not true.
Now,
No, hold on.
Wait,
if
let me
you do a
finish my
SPECT
sentence, please.
scan, okay, if you do a SPECT scan, you can see what parts of the brain light up. And in a woman, the basal ganglia and the amygdala is far more active, which is the inner thought matrix. Women have a far busier inner thought life than men do. Would you guys agree with that?
I agree.
Right,
I was
but-
gonna say it's very.
So that's not true.
It's very
Wait,
well known
I
that like
can finish.
men generally are more on the logical side of things and women are more on the emotional side of things. And I think that has a big role, or the way that our brains are wired has a big role to play. I'm not saying that if you took babies who were completely unmolded that, you know, their brains would look different, but I think as we age, living in the gender that we are given, you know, our brains become attuned to certain things, and that's why parts of our
Yeah,
brain
like
light up.
piggybacking off of that
Yeah.
point, I don't doubt that the studies that you looked at did find differences in like brain mapping scans between men and women, but the key thing is that they looked at men and women. So that's already a brain that's been subjected to a lifetime, or not a lifetime, but like decades long
So do you-
socialization.
let-
so
I- I
that
just wanna
socialization is
make
going
sure-
to impact it. If you looked
Sorry, I don't mean
at
to
like a
interrupt,
brain
yeah.
scan of like infants, for example, like a male infant and a female infant, it would be like how different would it really
So-
look? Do you think it would look significantly different?
No, it's not even close. Of course, it's different, and I can prove it to you in two ways. But the first one, do you guys know the John Money gender experiment?
No.
So okay, I'll just really quick. John Money, who is a total creep, he believed that this is before we mapped the human genome. Okay, this is before we even knew about chromosomes. He said that men and women are blank slates at birth, and he said that they're formed through the toys we give them, the colors we appropriate to them, and they're blank slates. There was these identical twins. One of the twins burns themselves terribly in the genitals, and he said raise that twin as a girl. And basically his entire life he was tortured, and awful story, eventually rebelled against John Money. And this twin eventually was told that, hey, you were born a boy but raised as a girl, and even had a vagina put onto you artificially. And he was like, instead of being mad, he was relieved, because he said, I knew I was a boy all along. So there's no clinical evidence to support that. Secondly, though, it's a funnier one, okay? Do you hear me out? And I think this will resonate with all of you. Harvard University locked a group of men in a room alone, 100 of them, and a group of women in a room alone, okay? And they said, what did you think about for 30 minutes? The men, no surprise, sex and sports. The young ladies, what did they think of for 30 minutes? They replayed conversations that they had in the last couple of days.
Real.
For the record, a man has never replayed conversations that they've had.
Do that?
I do that all the time.
Our
I do that
brains are
too.
different, everybody.
Do you really not do that?
I feel like I overthink
No, of
everything.
course not.
You don't
Hold
think
on.
about
I'm making-
conversations.
You've never had like a shower arguments or like shower thoughts or anything like that?
No, and that's not society, my friend. That is biology. You are wired to have those rethought. We aren't. It's not a learned behavior. It's not about dolls. It's not about dresses. Our biology, our brains are made differently.
You've
I don't
really
think
never thought
anyone's
about a
disputing that we
conversation
have
after?
like different.
We don't
Yeah, no,
replay
I
any
agree with that.
conversations.
Ever.
Men
You've
don't.
never like done that.
The thing.
Am
where
Am I trans? Because
people-
sometimes sometimes I will.
You gotta go on
Very
hormone
rarely
blockers.
though.
Yeah.
Very rarely. Sometimes occasionally.
Men are
I'll
very
replay a
forward
conversation.
thinking. What is next? The job, the interview, tomorrow. And not saying women aren't. Women are very reflective. That's why females are better at poetry. Women are better at the more relational type aspects of being a nurse or an elementary school teacher. Again, that's not learned behavior. There is a biological element to it. And it starts with, we don't even understand the brain as much as we can. We understand like 1% of 1% of it. But I think that study and your reaction affirms it. Because if I had a group of men around, you're like, what do you think of when you're alone? Like, I just think of the NFC Championship game, the stock market, and all the women I've been with or the women I want to be with. It's a little different.
Do you think if they had conducted this study in a different country, that the men and women would have given the same answers?
Yes, I think that these things are universal. And I mean, I can't say to that. That would be my speculation, that the men in Iran are thinking about soccer and Persian women, and the women are thinking about, what's going on in their local neighborhood. These things transcend continent, they transcend culture, and we know that because one of the arguments that you were making is that, at the fundamental root, these are learned and acted, these are put on by Western society, but you go into African villages, like very poor third world African villages, they don't even have a term for transgender. The idea that a man can become a woman or a woman can become man, this is a uniquely Western phenomenon that is born out of the academy, born out of college, that I will say, and I think we could agree, is largely they prey on people that have other underlying issues, and then it gets built on top of that. Autism spectrum disorder, depression, anxiety, some other sort of bipolar, schizophrenia, trauma, things of that nature.
There's a couple of things to push back here. Brian.
If you can, quick.
I don't mean to monopolize. I'm sorry, Pixie.
No, it's
Yeah.
okay. There's a couple of things. I do want to push back on that because there are communities and cultures that we could search up right now in China, India, various Native American histories that have recognized the idea of third gender or outside gender that doesn't fit into this binary. So I wouldn't say it's just Western.
That is
and then
true.
on top
Wait,
of that,
let him answer.
You please continue. You are right. I can address that at length. I don't think it's fruitful.
Okay,
But keep
okay,
going.
go ahead.
Okay.
You're not wrong.
And then on top of that, you gave a case study. I kind of want to give a case study back. NPR did a article on this. I can't remember the name, but basically it was about a person who felt gender fluid. And when they felt like they were a man and they did things like spatial recognition or other tests regarding that, they would score like a man does, higher than most women. But when they got into the mindset of being a woman, they would score higher in woman-related tasks. So yeah, it does come back. You're saying this is all predisposed biology, but there might be something to be said about oh no, if you're thinking like a man, the mindset of a man, maybe that's more in tune with certain ways of thinking versus thinking like a woman. That doesn't mean it's all 100% biological basis. It means that hey, if you're raised to think in a certain pattern, you're going to perform in that pattern.
I agree. I mean, if a society can mold you, of course, but you're dealing with very powerful raw material that's underestimated in the current cultural conversation. And you can only guide that raw material so much. So let me ask another hypothetical. I'll just tell you, if I sit down with men, what do they always talk about? They talk about macro concepts, big things, stock market, sports, things that are very, let's just say bigger than individual. Women, if you sit down, they'll talk a lot about conversations or relationships, their kids, very micro. This, one of the reasons why men and women brains are different and they continue to be different is there's different skill sets. And I think we can all acknowledge that. Men are better at some things than women, and women are better at some things than men. I don't know why that is a wildly
the way that you frame it is women are awesome at small talk and sewing or whatever, and then men are just awesome at the stock market and being CEOs.
Let me ask you a question.
I don't think these are.
But hold on.
You see them equally.
Let me ask you a question. Why is it that the International Chess Foundation doesn't want biological men who believe they are women to compete with women? They say that will not allow trans men into the female category. Why is that?
I can't speak to that, but if you're going to talk about representation being the thing that lets you know that men are obviously smarter, you could break this down to race.
I never said smarter. I said different.
Then different.
Women.
Okay, then we could say this.
My wife does things with my child that I can't even dream of doing, such as having an intuition, compassion, empathy. She can operate on 30 minutes of sleep. I need 8 hours, or else I'm like a
Don't
dead.
underestimate yourself, Charlie.
Hold
I
on
think
a
you can
second. No,
definitely do these
hold on.
types of
No,
things.
women have a different giftedness, I believe, given by God that is completely different than men. I never said smarter. In fact, a woman's intuition is far better than my intuition. I trust my wife's gut when it comes to people, when it comes to relationships, and she leans on me for, investments or politics. We are given different gifting. Now, with that being said, some women have a gifting in that direction. Those are the exception, though. There is a general rule, and the general rule is that women are far more gifted at people and caretaking and the intimate. I don't mean that demeaning or derogatory. I never use the word smarter or dumber.
I
that you might
agree.
be inferred. Oh, thank you, Molly.
Yeah. No, I actually very much agree with what you're saying. Me personally, I mean, sexuality is a big part of my life, and I think what you're saying actually really ties into a lot of like sexuality, because it's the man's role to be, kind of like if you're talking like the nuclear family, it's like the man's role to kind of be the governing force of the family, take care of everything on the outside, take care of, the finances, the stocks, all of that, and to kind of be the rock for all of the little things that the woman has to go through during the day. Just all the little conversations, all the things that she has to deal with that you're not there. And I think that, it's a really beautiful thing, like yin and yang, like there's
beautiful.
Parts of men that complement women, and there's parts of women that complement men. And the best thing is there's things that women can do that men cannot, and there's things that men can do that women cannot. And I think that the issue is we try and figure out like who's better, who's more powerful, who can, who gets to say what happens. And I think that the issue that's really dividing, and the beauty comes when you kind of bring those skills together.
I agree. That's wonderfully said, Molly.
That was beautiful, Molly. Let me switch to something really quick. We do have 2 chats we have to